And please welcome our heroic sponsor, Magnetism, and superhero, Paul Nieuwelaar. Today he will be presenting on Level Up Your D365, fixing common problems inside D365 from real-world scenarios.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today for our session on solving Dynamics 365 pain points. My name is Paul Nieuwelaar and I'm a product lead and technical lead at Magnetism Solutions based out of New Zealand. I've been working with Dynamics 365 for 14 years since the early days of CRM4. At Magnetism, we specialize in everything Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. Over the years, we've worked with hundreds of different Dynamics 365 customers and implementations across a range of different industries, and that's given us some great insight into the common pain points experienced by customers. Where we've been able to solve some of these problems, we always look at how we can package a solution and give it back to the community to help other customers around the world as well. Today, we're going to be looking at some of these problems that we've been able to solve and how easily they can be solved for you too. And finally, if there's any questions and answers, we'll have some time at the end to run through those. Attaching related SharePoint files to Dynamics 365 emails. If you're using the out-of-the-box SharePoint integration with Dynamics 365, a common problem you'll have is how do you actually use those documents from SharePoint to attach them to CRM emails? If you're generating documents and adding them to a record, it's a common requirement to need to email them to customers. So the out-of-the-box solution doesn't really give you a lot of options. And if you're just using the out-of-the-box tools, you'll need to download the file from SharePoint onto your local machine and then re-upload it onto the email in Dynamics 365. And that's just not a very nice experience for the user. We wanted to eliminate that problem and make it a simple solution for selecting related SharePoint files and attaching it to an email in Dynamics 365 without having to download anything manually and just making it a nice user interface. The solution we came up with adds a nice new Attach from SharePoint button to the command bar when you're using an email, and that allows you to select files from the regarding SharePoint location, and then these are attached directly to the email without you having to manually download anything. This is still using the out-of-the-box SharePoint integration that comes with Dynamics 365, and it just plugs in on top of what's already available. So if you're using the out-of-the-box SharePoint integration, this will save you loads of time and clicks. Cool, so we're just going to jump into a demo to show the Attach from SharePoint functionality. So here we've got an email record open, and this is already set up regarding a specific account. So when we click on this Attach from SharePoint button, it's going to pull up a list of all of the documents that are associated to that account, and that's just using the out-of-the-box SharePoint integration. So any documents, any files that are attached to the account are going to show up here available on the email. So what we can do is we can select any of these files. We can select multiple if we want. We can use the preview functionality to open up the file in SharePoint just to see what it is. Or we can select open folder to just open the whole SharePoint folder if we want to do any more stuff in SharePoint. So we can select multiple files. Once we're happy, we can just click on attach, and that will attach in the background. Once you see this message, you can click on close, and that will allow us to keep editing the email, or you can just wait and it will refresh itself and go away once it's finished. So we can click on close. And once that's uploaded, these attachments will automatically refresh. So there you go, you can see it's pulled those through now. And yeah, so we can continue sending the email. We didn't have to download anything to our local computer. Much easier than if we had to use the out-of-the-box upload and select from our computer. So again, that's just a really quick way of using the Attach from SharePoint functionality. Next, we had the problem of not being able to upload multiple files to SharePoint, and just the out-of-the-box integration with SharePoint in general is a bit clunky to use and has a few limitations when uploading files. If you've ever uploaded files to SharePoint through Dynamics, you'll know some of these pain points, especially one of the pain points is that you can only do one at a time, and there's a limit of 50 megabytes for each file. If you do need to attach files directly to SharePoint, you can go to the related SharePoint folder, and the SharePoint interface is a little bit nicer, but that's a few clicks away, and having to do that every time is a little bit clunky as well. So users have been asking for a better way to upload files, but unfortunately Microsoft haven't updated this dialog in quite some time, so there's still those previous limitations trying to use the out-of-the-box tools. Microsoft have recently introduced a new attachment grid with email attachments, but unfortunately this SharePoint subgrid hasn't received those features yet, so it's still lagging behind in features. So hopefully that'll come soon in the future updates with the out-of-the-box product, but for now we needed to come up with a solution to solve this. So what we came up with was a custom interface to upload files. It's basically a really simple drag and drop canvas with the option of uploading multiple files. There's also a browse where you can select multiple files, and it just feels a bit more natural and user-friendly than the out-of-the-box tool. And this all processes in the background, uses Power Automate, so it's doing all the connections for you in the background. You just need to select the files, and then it will attach those directly to SharePoint. And this is also just using the out-of-the-box document locations that get created automatically with every record, so you don't need to set up any additional integration. If you're already using the out-of-the-box SharePoint integration with Dynamics 365, then this also just plugs in on top, so you can use this right away. Cool, so we'll just jump into a demo. So here we've got a customer record, and this will work on any record in the system that has SharePoint enabled. Again, just using the out-of-the-box integration. So we've added a custom Infinity Buttons menu, and from here we can select Upload to SharePoint, and that'll give us a nice drag and drop canvas to upload files. We can also access this from the actual documents subgrid or from the associated SharePoint folder. So from here we can select Upload Multiple, and that'll give us that same drag and drop canvas. You can drag and drop files here. It supports multiple, or you can select some files manually using the browse option. So I'm going to select multiple files there, click on upload. So it's really quick because it's uploaded in the background. So this allows you to close this and do something else while it uploads, or you can upload another file as well if you want to. So once we're happy, we can close that, and it might take a minute to upload in the background, but we can just refresh that grid, and you'll see those files are uploaded now. So again, just a really quick way to upload files, and if you had to use the out-of-the-box way, it's a lot more clunky. You'd have to do one at a time. You can't select multiple, and obviously there's other limitations and lots more clicks involved to do that. The next pain point is how to get a summary of a record for providing to a customer if you have GDPR requirements or regulations. It's a common request these days for customers to be able to request a copy of all their data from a business, and this simple request can be quite burdensome sometimes if you need to export data from Dynamics, because you've got to consider not just the customer record itself, but all of the related tables, the activities, and any other custom tables and interactions that you might have stored in your system. So if you were to do this with the out-of-the-box tools that come with Dynamics, you'd need to use Export to Excel, and you'd have to first build up a query to select all the columns and filters that you want to use, and then you'd also have to run that across all the different tables that you might have to include for that customer. So first of all, you might have to start with the account. You might have to include contacts, activities, any opportunities or quotes, anything else that you might have in your system related to that customer. So that's all going to take time. You have to build up those queries. You have to remember to add the right filters, and you have to remember to add all the columns and everything that you need to include. That also adds a lot of risk because you could forget to include certain columns or tables. It takes obviously a lot of time as well to build up all of those queries and run all of those. And if you've got lots of customers requesting that, that can take up a lot of time from your staff. So what we ended up doing to come up with a solution for this is a simple interface where you can just select from any record in the system. So for example, from a customer, you can select to export to zip, and it will allow you to pick which relationships and which columns you want to include. So by default, we can just say select all the columns, select all the relationships, and then that will produce a zip file which contains a CSV for each of those selected relationships and tables. So you can see in this screenshot, we've got the account, which includes the single customer record that we've run this from. And then there's a related one-to-many folder, which includes all of those related tables, and there'll be a CSV in there with each of those relationships as well. So this allows you to do all of that customer export with a single click or with a couple of clicks in a nice user interface, and you get that same output, but in a lot less time and a lot less risk of accidentally missing something. So this way you're able to meet those GDPR requirements, and you don't run the risk of wasting a lot of time and running the risk of missing any data. Cool, so just a quick demo of the record to zip. So for this one, I've got an account record, and we want to just get a full export of this customer, including all the related records. So we can use this Infinity Buttons menu again and select record to zip. So we get an option to select all of the fields that we want to include. So I've just selected all. We can include any many-to-one relationships. So say we want the parent account details, we can select that as well. If we had any other lookups, like the primary contact that we wanted to include, we could select that as well. And then similarly, for one-to-many relationships, if there's anything underneath the account, so like the contacts related to the account or any notes, if we had things like opportunities, quotes, orders, invoices, we could select those as well. In this case, we have a custom many-to-many relationship to contacts as well, so we can select that just to include those in the export too. And finally, any activities. So in this case, we're just selecting some of the primary activity types. If you wanted to select any others, you could do that as well. And then for each of those 9 tables that we selected, you can select all of the columns or any columns that you want to include or exclude from that export as well. So if you had some internal IDs or something that shouldn't be included, you can exclude those. For this case, I'm just going to select all though, and not just next through all of these screens. And then finally, you can just click on download, and that will generate the zip in the background containing all the CSVs. Cool, so once that's downloaded, you can go in here and it contains a initial CSV which has the primary account details, and we'll just quickly open that up. So you can see it's got just one row with the account details and all of the columns that we included. So that's from that primary account. And then we have folders for the one-to-many relationships, so that's the contacts. We have folders for the activities, so that includes, in this case, just the email, because that's the only activity type that we have. So it includes the emails. I'll just quickly open that up as well, so you can see it has all of the emails included and all of the columns from those emails. And then we also have attachments, which has all of the attachments associated to those emails as well. So that's something that out-of-the-box export to Excel wouldn't allow you to do. So that's a feature that's only possible with this tool. Next, we had a problem of how do you copy a record in Dynamics 365. So if you've ever wanted to copy a record using an existing record as a template, you've probably wondered if there's any copy or clone functionality that comes with Dynamics 365. For example, if you're running events that aren't part of the same series, but that are going to have similar sessions and activities, it makes sense to be able to want to be able to copy those and create a new record from those using the same data that you've previously used for those records. Or if you have like reoccurring opportunities for a customer and they have the same line items that need to be generated each month, if you're just using the out-of-the-box tools, you'd need to manually create each of those records and copy across all of the values every time, and that includes all the related records as well. So that takes time as well, just like some of our previous problems that we've talked about, and it also adds an element of user error if something gets copied incorrectly. So we wanted to see if we could come up with a solution to this, something really simple to use that you can just copy a record and be able to select those related records as well. So what we came up with was something similar to the export to zip functionality, which allows us to basically select all of the fields, all the relationships to use for that cloning process. So just like before, we're able to select all the fields, select the relationships that we want to include. You can say exclude certain fields. So for example, if you're copying an event, you might want to exclude things like the start time, end time, but copy all of the related sessions and speakers and things like that. And so again, this gives you full control over what you can actually include in that copy. So it's not just a straight one-for-one copy. You can kind of customize what to include in that copying process. And at the end of it, you'll be able to open that copied record, and it will contain all of those related records and the fields that you've included in that process. Cool, so we're going to show a quick demo of how we can use this clone functionality for an event. So here we have an event that we want to copy. It's something maybe that is not part of a series, but it has maybe similar sessions or similar tracks and sponsors that we want to use for a future event that we don't necessarily want to have to manually type in every time. So what we can do is we can come to our event, and from this Infinity Buttons menu, we can select Clone Record. And very similar to the zip one, we can select all the fields that we want to include. If there's any system fields or anything that we want to exclude, or things like the event start and end date that we want to be able to change later, we could untick those if we don't want to select those for the clone. And then for the one-to-many relationships, we can select what we want to include in the copy. So we can select things like the sessions, the session tracks, the speakers, sponsorships, and that will create copies of each of those related records as well and associate them to the new cloned record. If we have any activities like tasks, those can be included as well. And then finally, for each of those related records, we can just select all of those columns as well. And if there's any system columns or anything, we can untick those, but I'm just going to select everything and just skip over. Then finally, just click on clone. Once that's cloned, you can click on Go to Record, and that'll open up the new record that we've just created. So you can see it pulls through all of the columns by default. We can change some of these values if we want to, give it a new name. And if we go into the Agenda tab, we can scroll down and you should see those sessions that have copied through. Same with the session tracks, the speaker engagements, and the sponsorships. All of those related records that we selected have been created as well. So a really quick way of copying a record, pulling across all the associated data. You don't have to worry about copy-pasting anything or manually creating all the associated data. So it should save you a lot of time. The next problem we had was how to actually get a print preview or an export of a record. So when you're looking at a form and you just want to quickly print it out or get a quick print preview, there used to be an option in the old days of CRM, but somewhere along the way this feature got removed and there's now no easy way to get a nice print preview of a record, especially now that tabs are all separated out into different pages. So it's a little bit harder to get a single view of a record and all the fields and information on that record in one nice view. So if you had to solve this with the out-of-the-box tools, you would need an admin or a system customizer to go in and create a Word template or a report, and you need to create that for every record that you need to have these print previews on. So there's quite a lot of effort up front to build something like that, and we wanted to do something a little bit easier so it's available anywhere. You don't need an admin or a customizer, and it needed to be just something that you can run off any record in the system, get a really quick print preview, and be able to print that out to PDF or print it to an actual printer if need be. So what we ended up doing was we created a button in the global command bar, which is just a nice and easy one-click action. And all that does is generates a print preview based on the layout of the current form. So it takes all of the tabs, the sections, and the fields that are currently visible on the form that you're looking at, and it puts those into a nice print preview, which you can see on the right-hand side. So it includes all of the fields in the same exact layout as the form, and it doesn't require any admins or anything to set up. It's free to use. You just install the solution, and it's ready to go out of the box. You can also customize the colors and the branding to match your company colors. So you can really personalize it to make it feel like a custom report of your own. Cool, and just over to a quick demo. This one should be really quick. So if we come back to our event that we used previously, we can create a quick print preview of this record from the Infinity Buttons menu. Just select Record to PDF. This button's available on any record in the system, on any form, and it will just automatically generate a quick print preview, as you can see here, and it's going to include all of the details from the form, and it's going to maintain the layout of the form, including the header, the section headings, the tab headings, and then all of the fields that are visible in those tabs. So if we scroll down, you can see all those different fields, all the different tabs, sections, and it's maintaining that same layout that the form has. So this can be used on any form, any table in the system, and it's going to have that layout automatically generated. And then you can select print if you want to actually print it to PDF, or print it if you have a physical printer, you can select that as well, and then that can be printed out here. If you want to change some of the colors, you can go into the solution, and there's a configuration page where you can customize the color scheme used by the PDF, so that you can make it match your company branding if you want to tweak those. So that's just a quick and easy overview of how you can print a record summary from any form in your system, and how you can customize the color scheme to match your branding. For the last section, we're going to look at some custom scenarios where we've needed to create custom dialogues to streamline different system processes. And often when you're building custom processes, you'll find that you need to capture input from users for certain processes. And this doesn't always make sense to be part of a form or a business process flow, and it's often required when initiating a process from the command bar. A few examples of things that we've needed to build in the past include time tracking controls, where a user needed to enter some information about the project they're working on and the time that they've spent. And then in the background, it'll create all of the records that are required for that interaction. And also when you need to customize the out-of-the-box dialogues, this is often not possible. So the system has some things like the case resolution process or the convert lead process, which do use dialogues under the hood, but they don't often make these available to customize. So we needed to create a way to create similar looking dialogues with our own custom processes to make it still feel like it's part of the Dynamics 365 family. So to solve these issues, we created our own developer tool, which allows system customizers and developers to create their own dialogues and multi-page processes. and it gives the customer or the developer complete control over how those dialogues look. There's a whole bunch of customization capabilities with it to build out your own dialogues, to customize the inputs, capture the input from customers and users, and then be able to process those inputs and do things with it like trigger flows or create records in the background, whatever you need to do. It's fully customizable. You can build your own dialogues and processes. If you want to find out more about any of these solutions, you can find some more information on our website. Otherwise, we're going to be doing a live Q&A for the next 5 minutes. So please stick around if you have any questions, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. Cool. Thanks to everyone who joined. There was a couple of questions that popped up during the session, so I'll just run through those. The first one was talking about the limit, the file limit when uploading files to SharePoint. If these were to be uploaded directly through SharePoint, there would be no limit. Yes, that's correct. So this solution is just to keep users in Dynamics 365. Obviously, you can click out into the related SharePoint folder, and then there's no limit to how big those files can be when uploaded directly. Next question was asking how those dialogues are created. So all those solutions are using a version of our dialogue builder solution. So there's no additional license required to use that dialogue builder. So they all use that dialogue builder component to create those dialogues. And then the next question was, rather than a custom pop-up, couldn't you just put an iframe for that record pointing to your SharePoint folder? I think that might have been in reference to the upload multiple. So yeah, I guess you could have a SharePoint iframe, and that would allow you to upload directly to that, or again, you could just link out to the related SharePoint folder. But yeah, so these solutions are just designed to kind of keep you within the Dynamics space, especially for the attach from SharePoint 1 when you're looking at an email, and just being able to attach directly from SharePoint onto those emails. And there's another question just asking to share those resource pages again. So I'll put it in the chat. So I'll just put a link in the chat here to our product page, and you should be able to get to each of those solutions from there. There's another question. What are the biggest challenges you see when a customer first migrates to using customer engagement products? Probably the biggest challenge, if they've never used Dynamics before, is just making sure that you have good training. What we typically do if we're doing a new implementation is we'll do super user training, so getting some key users across the functionality and then allowing them to do training with their extended users, so making sure they're familiar with all of the concepts and everything, and that usually helps them then help their internal users. Next question, are these buttons you talked about in Dynamics, or are these created by Magnetism? So these are all solutions that we've developed. The record to PDF one that I showed near the end, that one is a free one, so you can download that and use that right away. The other ones do have licenses with those. They're all relatively cheap based on the number of users you have, and we have different tiers based on the size of your organization. There's a question around the source code. So unfortunately, we don't provide the source code for each of those dialogues, so it's all part of those solutions. But we do have, for our dialogue builder solution, we have a whole bunch of documentation. If you do want to create your own custom dialogues, then you can see how to create dialogues. It's all basically just using the tools that we've developed and the dialogue builder documentation. Yeah, so those are all trade secrets, unfortunately, for how those dialogues are actually created for the individual solutions.